Hello, my name is Andrew Hall, and the Association for Mormon Letters is pleased to award James Arrington the Smith-Pettit Foundation Award for outstanding contribution to Mormon Letters. And we are joined by James Arrington himself and a panel of his distinguished friends and admirers, including Mahonri Stewart, Elizabeth Hansen, Marvin Payne, Petrie, and Steven Kapp Perry. We're going to start with Mahonri Stewart, who's going to read the official award citation.
All right. Not unlike Hal Holbrook, famous for his one-man performance of Mark Twain, James Arrington built his career on solo performances that have reached thousands in the Intermountain West and in countries as far-flung as England and New Zealand. Examples of his one-person plays include Here's Brother Brigham, Jay Golden, To Milwaukee, Matthew Colley of the Pacific, Wilfred Woodruff, God's Fisherman, co-written with Tim Slover, and The Farley Family Reunion, and its riotously funny sequels, The Farley Family Reunion 2, The Next Gyration, and The Farley Family Xmas. Yet his accomplishments range even beyond his considerable accomplishments as a playwright and an American Conservatory Theater-trained theater performer. Arrington has also been a screen actor, A More Perfect Union, a voice-over actor for animation, The Swan Princess, Living Scriptures, a stage director, a producer, and an educator at Utah Valley University, where he cultivated a generation of award-winning playwrights and actors. Like his manic performance of his unruly and hilarious Farley family, Arrington is a man who has shifted between many roles to adapt to the challenges confronted by that rare artist who made a living off his creative work. His rubber face and his quick wit are legendary to thousands who have flocked to his performances across the world. Arrington has performed as a prophet for prophets and other leaders of the Latter-day Saint faith tradition, including Gordon B. Hinckley and Spencer W. Kimball. Yet Arrington has never lost that folksy touch and fervent love for the common man and woman of Mormonism. With his pen and his tongue, he has portrayed a range of Mormons, from the heights of the legendary Brigham Young to the salt of the earth, casserole-bearing Aunt Pearl, all while focusing on the value, heart, and humor of them all. Arrington brings a mirror to Mormon society, at times a funhouse mirror that purposely exaggerates and distorts for comedic effect, but one that still authentically reflects his very keen social observations. Though some of his characters are broadly satirical, at the heart of his work is a burning faith that has weathered many challenges and personal disruptions to form a mature and seasoned worldview. It is no accident that Arrington's plays often center around Mormon historical characters. Being the son of famed LDS church historian Leonard Arrington, inheriting his father's passion for Mormon history, deep research went into his characterizations of Brigham Young, J. Golden Kimball, Matthew Cowley, and Wilfred Woodruff. In addition to those one-man plays, he also wrote a full cast plays about Joseph Smith, the prophet, the Utah War, March of the Salt Soldiers, co-written with Mahonri Stewart, and the Mormon Pioneer Exodus, Trail of Dreams with Marvin Payne and Steven Kapp Perry. Deeply steeped in legitimate historical sources as they are, his plays are not only good art, but good history. For his plays, for his performances, for his keen wit, for his warm insight, for his educator's cultivation of a new generation of Mormon writers and actors, and for his lasting contribution to Mormon drama, the Association for Mormon Letters honors James Arrington with the Smith-Pettit Foundation Award for outstanding contribution to Mormon Letters. Now, as one of James's former students, he made a contribution to my life I can never pay back. He's the one who kind of dusted me off and found me and helped produce my first play, Farewell to Eden. So everything I have, including my wife and children, actually branches off from that one event in my life. And so there's no man I can point to besides my own family that has had more of an impact on me. And so I'm very pleased to be a part of this. First time I encountered James was not as a student though, but as an audience member. In high school, I would watch a bunch of, I was very interested in Mormon drama even back then. And so I'd go to like Eric Samuelson's plays and Elizabeth Hansen's plays and a lot of stuff at BYU. But every year, my friend and I, we would go to see the Farley Family Christmas at BYU. We would take dates, and it was an annual tradition for us. And I didn't know him at the time, but I just laughed. And I remember my cheeks hurting so much just because I laughed so hard. And so he meant a great deal to me even then. And I remember playing his, it's not the full Here's Brother Brigham, but he did some Deseret Book tapes, I believe, with Brigham Young, and some of his things there. And so I bought those. I bought the J. Golden Kimball CD. I was a big fan. And so when I went to UVU, I saw his name in the catalog, and I purposely chose his class, which changed my life. So that was a very purposeful choice to take James's class, because I enjoyed him so much as a performer and as a playwright. Yeah, and so as a student, he had an obvious impact on me. And as a collaborator, we co-wrote, I was at first his research assistant, but then he brought me on a play called March of the Salt Soldiers, which was really fun to do with James. And so, yeah, that's my history in a nutshell with James, which doesn't do it credit, but yeah.
Thank you.
My turn?
Yeah.
First of all, I feel like I'm on the Brady Bunch. Hi, Terry. And hi, James.
It's Dave.
It's a story. Anyway, I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to put on some makeup and wear something other than flannel. So I really appreciate that. James Arrington. What can you say about James Arrington that isn't out and out lies? I've known James now for about 25, yes, count them, 25 years. I first met James when I moved up here in the mid-90s to teach at BYU. I was new in town, and James was putting together a playwriting group called the Playwrights Circle. He invited me to join them. So once a month I would get together, usually at James's house, with James, Marvin Payne, Eric Samuelson, Tim Slover, Marianne Harding, Scott Bronson, and Steven Kapp Perry. All the Utah heavy hitters of which I wasn't aware. Now, in all honesty, I can't say for sure that I had ever heard of James Arrington before that, but I don't think I had. I had left Utah in the late 1970s and had been gone for like 15 plus years. He was a Mormon writer, so obviously he couldn't be good. You see, we Los Angeles writers who were Mormon had a chip on our shoulders. No one who wrote for a Mormon audience, and certainly no one who was writing in Utah, could be any good. Well, I was wrong. During this time, I kept hearing not only from James, but from the group about this one-person show he had written for himself called The Farley Family Reunion. I don't know what I thought about it back then, but I'm sure my chip was still firmly on my shoulder. So one summer, shortly after we started the group, James was doing the Farley Family Reunion at, I think, an actual family reunion, and he invited me to come and watch. I begrudgingly agreed. So the chip on my shoulder and I got into the car and went. As I waited for it to start, the chip on my shoulder and I wondered what we were going to say to this nice man after the show, because we knew it was going to be awful. How could it be anything but? Well, James came out in his costume, started the show, and hilarity ensued. I had not laughed that hard since my divorce. The chip on my shoulder even laughed. At that moment, I realized that James Arrington, oh my gosh, I'm gonna cry. I realized that James Arrington was one of the most talented writers I had ever met. Because you see, a truly gifted writer not only understands his audience and delights them and enlightens them, but he respects them. James captured our culture with accuracy, but more importantly, with endearment. And at that moment, I fell deeply in like with James Arrington. James and I became good friends. I remember us talking on the phone when both of us were going through hard times, and I so appreciated his humor, his wisdom, and his kindness. A kinder man you will never meet. After I quit teaching at BYU, James took pity on me and repeatedly asked me to teach at UVU, for which I will always be grateful. He even cast me in Tim Slover's Joyful Noise that he directed. I am eternally grateful for that, since I am still close friends with all of the women I met in the cast. He even agreed to produce and direct the first production of my musical adaptation of The Enchanted April. James was always there for me, ready and willing to help whenever he could. My fondest memories of teaching at UVU is not the money I didn't make, because heaven knows I didn't make any, but those times at the end of the day when I would walk down the hall, peer through his office door window, see James sitting at his desk, and he would invite me in. I would sit down and we would commence to gab and laugh for about an hour. I never once got tired of a conversation with James Arrington, and I get tired of most conversations. In fact, I'm already bored. Just kidding. I don't think it's possible to get tired of a conversation with James Arrington. There's too much life, too much infectious joy, too much wonder in James. Not long ago, I saw his final performance of Here's Brother Brigham. I am ashamed to say I'd never seen it before. If I was taken with the Farleys, I was mesmerized by Brigham. I think that that play shows his artistry, not only his writing skill, but his acting skill. His performance transports you into the life of Brigham Young, and you want to go on that journey and never leave. So kudos to you, James. So when I found out from Andrew Hall that James was receiving this award, the first thing I thought was, are they nuts? Then the second thing I thought was, oh my gosh, did James die? Then the third thing I thought was, of course they are, because James Arrington is James Arrington. James has earned this award because he is accomplished, funny, generous, prolific, and not dead yet. Congratulations, James.
Thank you.
Oh, James is over there now.
Well, I don't even know what the hell I'm doing here. But I tell you, it's nice to see the young people in Zion achieving some sort of recognition for sharing their talents. When I met James Arrington, it was 40 years ago. I enjoyed being with the youth of Zion as James represented them. But I have one thing to say about this award, and that is simply this, that if this is any sort of lifetime award, you're going to present it to somebody such a young whippersnapper as James Arrington, it ought to be a lifetime award so far. I gotta say, my association with James, which indeed did begin 40 years ago, has been mostly him directing me, and one of the great joys of my life was to be able to spend some time on stage as J. Golden Kimball, which was just really a kick, and it wasn't. The thing I loved about that show was that it wasn't just a laugh fest. It was it explored the man's spiritual depth and his just the goodness, the thorough goodness of his character and the depth of his faith, and that was a joy to play. That was much more fun and much more rewarding than if it had been just all about hells and dams and getting embarrassed in front of state conferences in Southern. That was just a kick. Anyway, James has directed me a number of times. He directed me in that. He directed me in The Plane Maker, which was performed in a day that I would have been offended if anyone would have suggested that it had anything to do with acting, because I thought acting was, well, kind of silly. And I was only doing the show because Guy Randall and I had written it, and the folks who were sponsoring it said, this needs help. And so they pulled in James
and as a director, and he came in and we spent a number of days together, and he helped me understand that it was in fact acting, and acting is something that needed to be taken seriously. And then when I finally made a kind of a careening left turn into acting a couple or 3 years later, I took a lot of that. I took a lot of that with me, a lot of the counsel that I'd received from James. Later, he directed me in Charlie's Monument, and that was kind of a rescue deal, because there was one version in which I had been asked by the producers to come in and direct it, and I'd only even attended about a half a dozen plays in my life. And certainly had not directed anything. And when I came in and said, well, okay, pay me a bunch of money and I'll do this, and they paid me a little bit, and I did. And and that was another rescue deal, because I had 2 weeks to bring this production together, and long about halfway through the second week, the producers recognized that rescue needed to occur again, and so they got James. James came in, cleaned it up, and did such a bang up job that the next rewrite, several rewrites, the next rewrite, he came in as the director and actually made pretty much of a good show out of it. And then he directed me in our play, The Trail of Dreams, in its last incarnation just a couple of 3 years ago. It was a combined, no, it wasn't combined. It was a Sierra production. It was a UVU and Sierra production. Yeah. Anyway, it was dang fun. I've had a tremendous respect for James since the beginning. I saw Here's Brother Brigham first, before any of the Farley stuff, and I'm glad that I was exposed to James in that order, because Farley just would have entertained me right out of any kind of critical capabilities. But I saw Here's Brother Brigham first, and that made me take him very, very, very seriously. And then when I saw Farley, I just saw it in a different light than if I had seen it first. I saw Here's Brother Brigham in an early incarnation, and then I saw, subsequent to that, I attended several of the final performances of Here's Brother Brigham. James, because there were, he would have he would announce the final performance of Here's Brother Brigham. Everybody would go because it was the final performance, and then a year and a half later, he would announce the final performance of Here's Brother Brigham, and everybody would go because it was the final. Anyway, that happened a number of times, but I liked seeing the show, so I was inured to the advertising ploy. Anyway, as a matter of fact, I respect him for doing that, for bringing it back again and again and again, because the world cannot have too much of James Arrington. And with that, I'm signing off.
Thank you, Marvin. Listening to talk about Jay Golden, I listened to the Jay Golden tapes on my mission as well, and committed them to memory of the play. And then as soon as I got off my mission, there was a talent contest in Chicago, a young adult award. So I did about 20 minutes of solid Jay Golden for the performance. That was I think that was my only acting I've done since high school. And there was a lot of consternation.
I wish I had a nickel for every knockoff version of Jay Golden that went into the mission field and saved missionaries. We've heard a lot of stories about write in and say that got me through my mission, amazingly enough.
Okay, Terry, would you like to go next?
Check. Oh, it does work. Okay. I don't, number one, I don't know why I'm sitting here other than I have very few friends. And one of my choice is James Arrington.
Or James has very few friends. We don't know.
True. And I've heard him talk about each of you for years and years and years. And it's all true. What he says about each one of you is all true. And so if I'm in this kind of company, I'm in a good place. I can go away and die tonight happy, perhaps.
You're too young to die. Don't even.
I'm thinking all of us have a beard here tonight, which is, except perhaps maybe Elizabeth.
Thank you. I shaved.
40 some years ago when I was a student at BYU, my wife said, Terry, we've got to go see this play. And I said, why? I don't want to go see plays. I have much work to do. And he said, well, this is a young starving actor. And he's written a play about a group of people and he dresses up and we got to go see. Like you, Elizabeth, I never laughed so hard in my life, especially when he put his hand over a certain part of a Greek statue. Imprint of the image on the back of his hand just brought the house down. He had a way of taking kind of risque subjects and making them work. And so, like you, we went up afterwards to give him support. I was surprised it was sold out, but I then understood why it was sold out. And from that moment, I don't know what clicked, James, but you've been one of my friends ever since. And for that, I'm truly grateful. We've worked together for a number of years at UVU. When he wasn't department chair, I was, and was able to produce Enchanted April and these plays that we've heard some things about. And I agree with what everything everybody has said tonight. So I got the great idea that maybe I could take Farley Family Reunion into Canada because I'd moved back home and I was running a theater. And we were trying to do more LDS subject. And so James come up and thank heavens we played to sold out audiences. And I had one couple, Ross and Peggy, come up afterwards. They sat on the board that I had established for the theater. And they said, we can do this. It's too easy. We can do this. And you didn't have to bring him in. We can do this. He says, okay, in 6 weeks, I want to see what you've written, acted in. I'll produce it. Needless to say, they never come back, but they did tell me, James made it so easy they got fooled because it was not easy. And so that was an interesting moment. James and I were a few years later in Midland, Texas, if you remember that, James.
Oh, yeah.
Association of Community Theater festival. And we'd watched this play in French. It was a French farce. And died laughing. Never understood a word, but I started to understand that farce and some acting has to do with, as Mahonri mentioned, rubber face. And so we wanted to meet this troupe from Monaco, and a very exclusive troupe. And they paid attention to me for a few minutes. Then they got absolutely fascinated with the rubber face that James was able to do over and over again, to the point they wanted him to go live in Monaco and act in their company, which I think is a great compliment because they were very exclusive and they lived near the casino where the yachts come in. So that would have been a wonderful thing, but I'm glad James stayed here. James told me once of a story when he was playing Matthew Cowley in the Maori culture in New Zealand, and how the people would come up to him afterwards and call him Brother Cowley, and they'd ask for advice and they'd ask for blessings, and they'd point out little things you did wrong in the haka dance. And what was fascinating about that, they never addressed him as James Arrington. They only addressed him as Brother Cowley. And that's how deep James could get engrossed in a character. And I agree with you on the Brother Brigham. Here's Brother Brigham, that was just mesmerizing to watch him perform one of the prophets. And I think he captured it probably closer than Brigham Young would be comfortable with, but that's okay. And I just was always wondering what it would be like to have people think you were that character. Because I was a producer director, and the reason I became producer director is I didn't have to go on stage. And so this great admiration for James, who could get up on stage and do things that many people like me, are afraid to do. I watched him perform part of Farley Family at UVU in front of all the faculty and staff in the David O. McKay Event Center. And I thought, there's no way you're going to pull this off. It's not lit. You're standing on a bare stage. You have a microphone and nobody's interested. Wrong, 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 and wrong. And the laughter was wonderful. When I became chair of the department, I hadn't got the job yet. And James is sort of the last holdout on the faculty. And I knew I had to get him on my side. And if things worked out, I'd become the chair of the department. So I went over to hold a personal meeting with James. And he invited me into his office like he did with you, Liz. And we did. We talked for an hour. And at that time, he committed to stand shoulder to shoulder with me, because the department had some problems that we had to work on, and they would have to be changed to get it so it could become where it was when we left, with the brand new facilities. And James is a man of his word. He committed to stand shoulder to shoulder, and he and I had to deal with some extremely difficult things, terminations, changing faculty, encourage him to go in a different direction, encourage him to do a much better job. I hope, Marhana, you agree that much of that worked out well. And a lot of that was due to James's support, so that he'd have the courage to be able to go in front of, you get too many faculty in a room, it's not good. And go into this room of faculty and say, we need to make these changes, need to do these things. And knowing you had James's quiet support was very comforting and very courage building. And he spoke of you each in that same way. So I get the impression you were comfortable being around James and working with him. And so I do owe a great deal of success at that time of UVU, when we were building the department from nothing. And the first person to phone me after presenting in Price that we needed a 4-year degree, and these are the reasons why we needed a 4-year degree. And I hadn't even gotten back yet. And James phones and says, how did it go? What did we do? I says, we got the 4-year degrees. And he was just excited like a young child. And that excitement was always contagious and went through things. As a matter of fact, it was so contagious one time, I'd look out my office and here's this lady walking down to James's office. And then a while later, another lady'd walk down to James's office. And this went on for several days. I'm thinking, why are these ladies coming and visiting James? So I said, James, you got to tell me what's going on. You're red now. You might be redder when I'm done. I don't want to tell you. I said, you got to tell me, James. I mean, these ladies are coming in droves. What's going on? Oh, I'm trying online dating. And it was very, very successful. But it's one of the few times I've seen James with terror in his eyes as the ladies kept coming down the hallway. James, we have done a lot of things on and off for the last 40 years. And for a large part, it's your philosophies, your humor, your way of life, your friendship, your expertise, your talents, your advice. I've always considered you a brother. And that advice held me in such great stead during trying times. And you and I know we both had a lot of those. And so a large part of my success, and I've been, for a little boy who grew up in the wilderness of Canada, to end up coming down here and being associated with the group that is sitting here tonight is more than a dream come true. And I am in your debt for that. And thank you, brother.
Okay, Steven, would you like to go next?
Yes, thank you very much. I was trying to think if I had to do this in one word, James, what I would say, and as I thought through several different interactions, it would have to simply be theatrical. Everything that I know about you is theatrical. It's larger than life. It often includes gestures and expressions without words, but it still conveys the meaning. So my first experience of having my mind expanded by James was, like for some of you, I met Farley before I met Brigham. And someone had told me I ought to go see this guy. And it was in a barn somewhere in West Jordan. And I thought, when they ask us to
Oh,
help,
how many times have I said that?
I thought, will we have to help round up
there.
the cows after, or what? So I sat there and truly had my mind expanded and blown as to what theater was. As was already mentioned, Terry, you mentioned seeing him come out on an empty stage with a couple of lights. But from the moment he started, we were somewhere else. It was what theater can be from just starting from zero. And it was a magical thing I had never experienced in that way. And I, on the way home, called all of my siblings and their spouses and said, you have no choice but to come with me to the show tomorrow. I bought you all tickets. And if you want me to still love you, you have to come see this with me. And like so many people, that next evening, with all the people I brought back, it became part of our family culture, or culture.
Culture.
So I thank James for that very much. The next time I interacted with him was when I was coming from being in music and being a songwriter to try and write something theatrical. And it was a one-person show for my wife, who was an MDT graduate and had done a one-woman show as part of her senior project. So I called James and I thought, well, he won't want to do this. He doesn't know me from Adam, but I'll offer him money. And I know he's an actor, so he'll probably take it. And so I said, I need 2 hours and I'll pay you this much. And he showed up very kindly. And I sat down at the piano and said, the opening will kind of feel like this, and then this. And he said, stop, 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 stop. I don't want to hear any music. I said, what? It's a musical. He said, no, tell me the story. And as I started to tell the story, I started to find all the holes. They became so obvious as he sat there as my audience. And he didn't laugh, which he well might have, having done many one-person shows and knowing the absolute ignorance I was showing. He very kindly watched me, and I think he noticed me noticing the holes and making notes. And then he said, well, I would suggest, and he gave me 3 things, and he left. So I did those 3 things, and it took a lot of work. And then he came back, and I had done the things, and he said, oh, most people don't do the things. So he said, yeah, I'll be happy to sort of coach you through this, but you have to have this experience yourself. And he said, I knew ways to fix those 3 things, but you needed to learn how to do those and have them be your own solutions. I loved that. And he, I am sure, went on to do that with every student he ever worked with, to respect that a project that I had the impetus for could somehow, with a little coaching, grow rather than him just telling me what to do. The other thing about James is I was always astounded in conversation. I would be holding a conversation, but part of me would also go sit over here and listen to the strength of his language. That even in everyday conversation, the power of the words he would choose, the colorful images, and of course he made me laugh. And I would think, how is he doing this? I thought his mind is wrapped around more things than mine is. How do I learn how to do that? And I've just always been amazed and taken joy in being around someone who was like that, because I felt like it sort of, a few sparks sort of let little parts of me and my own writing open up in ways that I might not have imagined. And then finally, well, I do want to say, we won't know if it's really the last Brother Brigham until the performance, when he says, how many wives do I have? And he just said straight out, because he never does in any of the performances I've been to. He always says, well, wait, and then he tells a story, and I'm always waiting for the number. That's how I'll know it's the final Brother Brigham. One of the great honors of my life was to get to be a collaborator with James and Marvin on a play called The Trail of Dreams for the sesquicentennial back in 1997 of the pioneers coming into Great Salt Lake Valley. And we each had ideas separately, and none of us had time to do it, but we had each spoken with each other about and commiserated. And I thought, these are good ideas. Too bad nothing's happening. And I thought, if we all three get together, I wonder if we could make it happen. And that turned into the Trail of Dreams. And again, my mind was expanded by James teaching us the ways that language is a time machine, not being anachronistic, finding the right balance between words that everyone here today can understand, but also harken back. Everything that he talked about taught me something, because he knew the history and he respected the history. And even in Farley family, with all the silliness that ensues, I felt like he loved everyone. Elizabeth, was it you who said he respected? You found that he respected, as over the top as they were, as much as I screamed and then was gasping for air because of something I just seen on stage, that surely that did not just happen in this company. And yet I found something so real. And I think to me, it worked because I thought, he knows those people, even if they're just in his mind, but he also loves them. And that's something remarkable about James, I think, that I have always from the beginning felt respected and taught and able to learn just by association. And theatrical. James is in every way theatrical. And thank you, James, for what you've given us to so many people in so many different ways, in film and in theater, in teaching, all of these different ways. Much appreciated for your theatricality and pulling us out of our little lives into something bigger and more exciting to be part of. So.
Thank you. James, would you like to say anything?
That's kind of overwhelming to hear all these things said about oneself. I keep waiting for someone to drop a bomb, and you never did. There were plenty of bombs to drop. There's a lot that wasn't said here, but first of all, I love all of you. I think you are all high-generated, exciting people to be with, and every one of you I've learned something from and tried to take it away with me. I honor and respect you and admire you all, both for your talent and just for being good people. You're all good people. And I've been blessed to be surrounded by good people much of my life. And even in the tough times, when you have to make hard decisions and make people unhappy with you, you're surrounded by good people who say, well, you have to do that, and then you're okay. I appreciate that. I want to thank the association for this high award. I looked over the people who've won it before me, and that's pretty high company, and I'm grateful to be part of it. And thank you all, whoever was in on the process of doing it. I'm grateful. It's a sweet thing. I want that citation put on a nice piece of paper so I can put it right up here on my wall and remind me of this night. It's a great night. Lovely things were said. I think that in my life, I have just enjoyed doing this. And I have to say, to a certain degree, I've followed the line of least resistance. You know, I could have tried to do all kinds of other things, but this is what was fun to me. And so I went out and I just kept having more and more and more fun. And running into other people who thought it was fun too was even more fun. We were all having fun together. And what fun that is to have fun with everybody else. Yes, you have problems, and yes, you have difficulties, and yes, you make hard decisions, And sometimes you have to be critical, but you don't have to be critical in a mean way. You can be critical in a thoughtful way and try to suggest a solution along with the problem. And so whenever we work together, as each one of us have in some way, I have felt respect from you, and I've felt that you listened to what I had to say, even if we decided against what I said. It was a decision that we made mutually, and it was a decision that was worthwhile and thoughtful. And I am very grateful to all of the people that I've worked with. I'm talking about the people who put me up in Hawaii, and the people who came out and listened to me in England when I was doing Here's Brother Brigham over there, and Alaska, where they took me for a plane ride and put down on a lake no white man had ever seen before. And, you know, I've had lots of adventures that were really strange, that had nothing to do with the theater, but because I was doing the theater and in those unusual places, I had all those wonderful experiences and met you guys. And you are so great. Each one of you is so great to me. And to have this little Zoom meeting is so exciting because I haven't seen you in months. Years, some of you. I hope this doesn't mean that you think that my lifetime of art is over. I have other things that I want to try, and I'm slowly knocking the rust off, trying to get ready to write something else. I want to write another musical. And I have a good friend in Twin Falls who is a composer, and we're going to write a musical. I think we're working on something now, and who knows where it'll go? You know, you just never know. But we've been talking here about things that I have done, and I want to give people an opportunity to see them if they haven't had an opportunity. There's a place called JamesArringtonProductions.com. And you can go there and you can order a Here's Brother Brigham, or you can order a Farley Family Reunion, or you can order a Farley Family Christmas. You can even order the horrible organ music that plays during the Farley Family Christmas, which is one of the favorite parts to me. And you can order those and have them in your own home. We have Wilford Woodruff there, and we have Jay Golden there, and so. If you'd like to get those and enjoy them, I don't watch them myself. I have to tell you, I have a hard time watching myself do these things because I immediately recognize all the things I should have done, could have done, ought to have done, and didn't do. And so I'm very critical of myself. But other people seem to enjoy them. And so as a theatrically minded person, you can check in with JamesArringtonProductions.com, and you can find yourself something to see. Once again, thank to you all. What a great opportunity this is. I love you all. You're all part of my history that is just packed with wonderful people. And you were selected for a reason, because you were some of my very favorites. And I thank you all and appreciate it very much.
Congratulations, James.
Yay, James.
Yay, yay, thank you for telling all those good stuffs.
Hey, James, can I ask an AML related question?
Absolutely.
You performed Here's Brother Brigham at the AML's first conference in 1976 at the Hotel Utah. Do you remember that?
No.
Leonard Arrington helped.
I did about 1,000 of them, you know.
Yeah.
I don't remember them.
Okay.
Anyway,
Leonard
I guess
Arrington pushed the organization to be created. He pushed Eugene England and Levina Fielding Anderson and Maureen Ursenbach Beecher to form the organization in 1976, and he had them meet in the church historian's office conference room, and he got in trouble with the First Presidency for that. They called him. His diary talks about, who is this AML? But they had their first conference at the Hotel Utah, and Leonard spoke there, and you performed Here's Brother Brigham over the lunchtime or something like that.
Hmm.
So you were there at the beginning.
Wow, I don't remember that at all. There are times that I do remember where I was in front of people. I remember performing a piece of Here's Brother Brigham for the Brethren after conference one year, and they were having a dinner party, and they had asked me and some other people to come in and perform for them. And so I was asked to do a short piece of Brother Brigham. And so I thought, well, this will be easy. This this is easy. They're a bunch of old men and their wives. They're all having a good dinner. They'll be happy. And when I went out there, I turned around and there were all the faces that I just listened to for 3 days, and I almost fell over. And they are all looking up at me with these wide eyes, very intent looking at me. And I looked down at them and I thought, no, you're Brigham Young. You got to talk to him now. And so I started off and gave my piece, and I ended it with Brigham's sort of testimony. And he's pointing his finger down at people and he's saying, now you pay attention here. This is important. This is real. And I'm looking down my finger and there's President Kimball right at the end of my finger. And he's just looking up at me with these great big eyes. And his mouth is dropped open and he's listening to me like I'm Brigham Young, you know? And I almost fell apart at that moment, but I continued and I finished. And afterwards they wanted to meet me. So I got to shake all their hands and he came up and said, Brother Arrington, that was a wonderful performance. We loved every bit of it. Thank you very much. Well, I said, have the prophet say that. Boy, I was thrilled. So I've had lots of different places where I've performed it. I performed it outside. I've actually awakened people from their tents while I'm on a horse in youth conferences. I've been in a wagon that ran away with the horse. I've had all kinds of experiences playing Brigham Young because everyone has their idea of what they want Brigham to do. And Brigham, of course, does it. But not always with the success that you might hope. Children 17 years old with this was before they start making them not bring their music with them, and getting them out of bed in the morning. Oh boy, that was tough. I had to use my cane. Anyway, thank you all. Thank you all. This is a great event. It's been very, very sweet for me. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
You are so welcome.
Thank you, James.
We love you, James.